Hi everyone, and welcome to another tutorial here at www.unitycookie.com. And this tutorial, the fifth in the tower defense series. In this one we'll be looking at how to set up waves, score, and player health to work in your tower defense games. Let's take a look at how this works right now. Pretty straightforward. If you remember from the previous tutorial, which hopefully you've gone through that and the others, we've got some just simple flying attack enemies coming through. The SAM turrets will fire at them, but not the ground turrets. But now they'll go in a wave, and then, as you can see here, another wave comes. And each time as the wave comes through, they get a little harder. The flying ships get a little more health, and they go a little faster, and they also respawn a little quicker, which means you get more coming through each wave. So it's a bit of a exponential thing, the way it goes up. Nothing too linear, so that way it starts out sort of, gradiates up, doesn't get too hard right away, but starts to get pretty steep in the further waves. And I have it set to a very fast 5-second wave right now, and then a 5-second intermission. So let's take a look at how this is put together. First, we have the new GUI up here. Let's take a look at how that's put together. Unfortunately, I think my scale might be a little off, but it doesn't matter. In the end, it's just the GUI. So if we take a look at this here, just a couple items, just some simple labels that we add the text to. And as usual, this is just using, or will be usual from now on, using the NGUI free edition to create the GUI. I think it's much faster and looks much better than coding it by hand and using the Unity GUI. So NGUI free edition. If you want to look up, of course, how to get this, just check out our NGUI tutorials, and you'll see how to get a hold of the free version, install it, set it up, all that, and also just basics on how to use it. So just going over that real quick, I just have a panel on the top and then 3 different anchors. Top center for the score, top left for, of course, the waves, and top right for the health. And that way, no matter how the game changes, if I move this around, let's see, just like this, you can see that they always stay where they need to be. They're anchored right there. Let's bring that back. Okay. So, and then also all of these are underneath a single panel. That way it only creates one single draw call, as you can see here, versus having a panel for each of these. And again, each of these are simply a label. And we'll look at how this is all set up and made dynamic using the code in a moment or two. So the major changes to this tutorial, coming from the attack jet tutorial, are in the level master script. And I've also created, just to keep things a little more organized, a separate level master object instead of having the script on the main camera. And this way we can make this into a prefab and instantiate it around if we need to, and just keep better track of where the script is located, and be able to send messages to it easier from other game objects. I've also, you'll notice, I have it named underscore level master, and that way you can keep it right at the top of your hierarchy all the time, so you're not digging through and looking for wherever it is, alphabetically ordered. It's right at the very top. So using the underscore, pound sign, exclamation point, things like that, you can kind of layer your more important items so you never lose them. So anywho, level master up top there, and on that we have the level master script with a lot of new options since the last time. So let's take a look at that. Oops, wrong item. Okay. So on here, a couple new things. First of all, we have a static var player damage, and this of course is just the damage the player has taken, and it's static so that we can access it from anywhere. Other scripts a little easier than otherwise if we need to. We have a few states, whether the wave is active and whether we should spawn enemies. These are just booleans that we can turn on and off. They both start false so that we can start the game, have intro sequence or whatever you might want to happen, and then you can later actually turn those on using a different function somewhere. So they both start false. We have the player variables, which is the health count, how much health the player starts with, and the score count, of course, being 0 there. Oops. And a couple GUI variables which link up to the GUI. So we have the wave text, the health text, and the score text. All of these, the type is a UI label, which you can find when you select the UI piece itself. say the score text here. So this is a score, moving that around. And if you look under here, the script type is UI label. So just like if I were going to script a connection to the level master, the type would be level master. In this case, the type is a UI label. So by doing that, I can simply drag and drop in the GUI parts. So if we look at that, right under here, we have the wave text, which connects to that, the health text, and the score text. So those are each just, dropped right in there, like so. Moving down, we have some wave-specific variables. There's the wave level, which is, of course, the current wave that we are on. It starts at 0 because in the start function for this, it pushes it up one level automatically. And this just saves us from making a extra function that's going to start the wave in a special first-time wave method. You could have that too, but this way I have only one single function to start it, and that's further down. So let's keep staying up here. We have a difficulty multiplier, and I'm using this just to be able to globally increase the difficulty throughout the game, so I can multiply, the respawn times, the health of the ships, maybe even the health of the player, the amount of score you get whenever you shoot an enemy down or something, all sorts of things you can use this for. So that way everything stays all together as the game gets tougher and tougher. We have the wave length here, and this is just how long the actual wave will last before it stops spawning any enemies. And intermission time, and this is how long to wait after the wave has ended. You've shot down all the enemies, just sort of waiting. This would be the time where you can build new turrets or anything like that. Pretty straightforward there. The wave end time, and this is a private var because we don't need to see it. It's simply the start function. The game will calculate exactly when the wave should end and places that time in here. So we'll look at that further down. Under the enemy variables, a couple new things. First of all, enemy prefabs. Instead of before we had just the flyer prefab, a single item, now we have enemy prefabs, and this is an array. So on the level master, we have it right here. Right now the array is just one. It could be multiple, and it would spawn in different enemies. So this way, if you have, of course, you're going to have maybe, well, let's just say many different types of enemies, you'll drop them all into this array, and make sure you tag them as ground enemy, air enemy, maybe to have even more specific categories like wheeled enemy or tread enemy or something like that. So that way when you bring them in, you can apply some special changes to it, which happens down in the spawning function down there, which we'll take a look at also in a minute. So moving on, we have the flyer spawn still, and if you remember from the previous tutorial, that is just the spawn points where all the flyers come in from. And a private variable that's going to hold all of those transforms. Again, take a look at the previous tutorial if you need to look up either of these. So we have the respawn min base and the respawn max base. And these are just the starting level 1 respawn times. And I have these set as a base because every time we go up a new wave, we want to multiply on top of that base to get the current wave's actual respawns. That's why I have a private var for the respawn min and one for the respawn max here. And that's because I don't want to keep multiplying the difficulty on top of the already multiplied number. So let's say it starts out as 1, we go to eventually wave 5, and let's just say we multiply it by the wave number. Let's say we go to wave 2. We'll multiply the wave number. Now the respawn time goes to 2. And if we go to the next one, which is going to be wave 3, we take 2 times 3 equals 6. So we've gone from 1 to 2 to 6. And then, of course, 6 times 4 is 24, and it's just going to ramp up like crazy. So this way, it's always multiplied by the base. So at wave 2, it's going to be 2 times 1. At wave 3, it's 3 times 1, and so forth. So we keep multiplying by these numbers, and this number will hold the actual respawn that we use to calculate exactly when to spawn. So a little further down, the respawn interval. This could actually be private var, but I've left it open just so we can watch in the level master and make sure everything is working as we want. And below that, the enemy count. And another item, you can make a private var later on if you need to. This just keeps track of how many enemies are currently in the scene. So we use this just to make sure whenever a wave ends that we don't prematurely end and move on to the next one. We have to make sure all the enemies have either been destroyed or have passed the player and entered the player trigger in the back and basically taken health off of you. So the enemy count just makes sure that always works properly. And last of all, we just have the last spawn time, a private variable, where we keep track of when the last enemy was spawned, just so we can know when to spawn the next one, is all. So moving down, in the start function, we have a couple new things. First of all, this is all the same as before. We haven't changed anything from the attack jet tutorial. We are just finding all the spawn points and setting them up, nothing new there. However, now, here we have a set next wave and start new wave. So on start, we're first of all going to set the next wave, which is right down here. And this does a couple things. First of all, it ups the level by 1. So again, that's why we started at 0. Now we go up to 1. We set the difficulty multiplier based on the wave level, which is just some fancy math, basically applying a exponent. So we're squaring the wave level and then multiplying that by 0.005 and then adding 1. So we get a simple exponential grade to how difficult the game becomes as you move on. We also then set the respawn min based on that multiplier and the respawn max based on that multiplier. So the next thing after that is the start new wave function. So right below the set, we're going to do a couple things. We're going to first of all update the HUD, going to spawn a new enemy, going to set the wave end time based on the wave length, and make sure and then turn on that wave is active and spawn enemies. So this update HUD is a function that I created to simply update all the HUD items all at once, so that I'm not in different functions calling in different ways, just parts of the HUD updating, so that we don't end up with anything different. It's all kind of centralized. It gets updated all in the same way every time and always make sure it's all properly done. So update HUD, let's take a look at how that works. Right here, right now it has just a few simple methods that it has to do. It simply does the wave text dot text equals wave plus wave level, and this is how we set a text or basically make dynamic text in NGUI. So if you remember, wave text is actually the variable that we set up here to hold the GUI items, the NGUI items. So here's wave text. And we can simply do .text, since it's a UI label. .text will access the text in it. We tell it equals wave in quotations, since that's a string there, plus wave level. So it's going to be just like this shows here, wave, and then it'll end up with a number on the end for the wave level. And we do the same for the score and the same for the health text. So let's start new wave. The last thing it does, or the last of these functions it does, is the spawn new enemy. So it's just spawning the first enemy, and we do this a little differently than in just the attack jet method from the previous tutorial. So first of all, we get just a random index or integer so that we can pull up a random enemy prefab. We also get a random spawn point, and we have to do something a little special here. First of all, if we have both air enemies and ground enemies, as you probably will in your game, you probably won't want to spawn the ground enemies at the same place as the air enemies. They're going to spawn, up in the air and have to fall down and then walk over, or who knows how that would work out. So we'll set this up so that it spawns them, or it chooses from different spawn points based on the tag, whether it's an air enemy or something else. So down here you would have, you could have multiple if statements or elses, and those would be for anything like if the tag is ground enemy or wheeled enemy, or again treaded enemy, anything like that. In this case we still only have air enemy, so that's the only one that's in here. And then we just choose a spawn position. So we do spawn choice equals random, getting an integer or an index for that, and we instantiate in the enemy based on this up here, the random integer here, and the random index from this here. And that way we get a random enemy out of that list and a random spawn point out of the spawn point list. And again, the list is coming from the level master right under here, enemy prefab. So this could be as many enemies as you have. In our case, of course, we still just have the attack jet prefab. So after we spawn the enemy, of course, we set the enemy count up 1 to let the game know that we just added someone. That way we're keeping track of the wave completion. And I hope everybody notices I've tried to add quite a few more comments in here, so it's much easier to keep track of as you're going along, especially if you're just watching the video and don't have the source files. So last in this function then, we just set the respawn interval to a different random number, so every time it's going to be different how often the enemies are spawning in. So that's spawn new enemy, pretty simple, not a whole lot of changes in there, but just made to work with the new system and spawn them in for the waves. So let's take a look at how these waves actually work. So going back up to the top, so we've looked at function start. Next is the function update, has some bits changed in it. If you look here, before it was simply we were spawning in the flyer on its own constantly depending on the respawn time. Now we have a little bit of a difference. First of all, we check if the wave is active before doing anything at all. Obviously no point in doing something if the wave is not active. Next we check if the wave is past the end time. So if it's past, then we need to first of all turn off spawning any enemies. Then we need to check if the enemy count is 0, then we can finish the wave. So we don't want to finish the wave until all the enemies have either been destroyed or passed, through the player trigger in the back. So otherwise we have to wait a little bit and then finally finish it. If the time is not past end time, we still want to, or if the spawn enemies is on, then we still want to check and spawn enemies. So here we just do, again, the same thing that was up top here, checking if the time is greater than the next spawn time. And if so, then we simply spawn the next enemy from down there. So when we keep doing that, again, until the wave is past the end time, and then we finish the wave. So let's say the time does pass the end time, the enemy count equals 0, so all the enemies have been destroyed or passed into the player trigger, then we can finally finish the wave. So down here a ways, right here. Right here we have the finish wave function. It does a couple things. We're going to set the wave active to false, so the game knows we're no longer going through a wave. Then we're going to wait just for the same time as the intermission time, which again is set right over here in the inspector. And then on to the next wave. So just as in the start function, we set the next wave and we start a new wave. So looking at this real quick once more, you'll see that now it bumps it up, so it goes from 1 to 2. We set the difficulty multiplier a little higher. The respawn, min and max, etc. go up. So pretty straightforward there. Next wave, next wave, next wave. It'll continually just get harder and harder and keep on moving. So we have some additions to the attack jet as well, so it will work with this new wave system, and also so that you can get scoring from it, and it damages your health if it goes through into the player trigger in the back. So looking at that, so we have some new things in here. First of all, we've connected to the level master, so we have a new var in here, level master, and the type is level master, since that's the script here, script class or type. So we can connect up to that, and we do it right in the start function. So we just grab the level master by the tag level master, which you want to make sure you set up right there. Of course, if you need to add that, it's just under add tag, type it in, and then you'll have to just select it like so. So once it has that tag, we can very simply search through the games and find it, through the game objects. One thing, if you just do a game object.find and search by name is a very slow call. It's something you want to do as little as possible, if ever. I usually try to just never use it. There's not really a good reason to. Just use a game object that find with tag is much faster to do. And that'll just return the first object it finds with a tag of whatever name you put in the string area here. So that finds the level master, since its tag is level master. And then we do a simple get component level master to grab the script on it. So once we have that connected, we can do some things. Mainly we're setting the forward speed times the difficulty multiplier on the level master. So again, this is why in here we are setting the difficulty multiplier just one simple number here on the level master, so we can always multiply everything else by it. So we're doing the respawn times, we do the forward speed times it, we do the health times it. So again, we're multiplying the health and the max health. And once again, something that if you look back at the previous tutorial, the attack jet tutorial, that'll explain this a little more. And of course, most of this script. We haven't changed a lot in here, mostly just the speed, the health, and one or two other things. So down in the function explode, under this function here, we've added some things. First of all, we tell the level master that the enemy count has gone down 1 once this is destroyed. We also give the score count a boost. So that's the max health times the forward speed times the level master difficulty. And this way you just get more of a score as the game goes, because of course it's a little tougher to destroy each enemy, so you get a little more. Just the max health plus the forward speed times the multiplier, and that's all added onto the score. We also then update the HUD, since if you just destroyed an enemy, it should probably update your score up here. And then lastly, still the same parts here, we instantiate the explosion effect and destroy this actual game object. So that's it for the attack jet, and we have some additions to the player trigger as well, so that that works properly. So on the player trigger, we have added, first of all, a connection to the level master, which we connect in the start, just the same as we did for the attack jet here. And then on the trigger enter, instead of simply destroying the enemy as it goes into it, we now actually remove a little bit of the health. So we're just doing level master.health count minus minus. We of course set that enemy count down 1 as well. And we update the HUD so that the health will go down, and it takes care of updating that again just right within one simple call. So that's really it for the script changes on this. Remember, when you're playing it, you can even hit play, when you're testing it out, and go ahead and change this any way you like. You can directly set the wavelength or the intermission time, all that. Have some fun and drop in some different enemy prefabs. You could even just change up the color or anything on these attack jets and drop some extras in there. If you want to see how your game will play at a much further wave, you can just take the wave level, set this to say 20, hit play, and there we see these are moving quite a bit faster. Pretty much impossible at this stage unless you had, upgraded towers, etc., so forth. So you can test it out real quick, just see how playable your game will be at the further levels. You can set anything like the intermission time, the wavelength. That should probably be, for a regular game, more like 30 seconds. But for testing, I found keeping it at 5 allows you to test waves as they go by and see how it's working very easily. And that's basically it for this tutorial, so thanks for watching. And again, if you have any questions, anything wasn't entirely explained, make sure you just drop a comment on the tutorial itself and I'll be happy to help out. So thanks for watching, see you on the next one.